Es nuestra responsabilidad colectiva trabajar por una sociedad más justa y equitativa, construida sobre los fundamentos de la verdad y el reconocimiento y la conexión auténtica con los demás. También tomamos un momento para reconocer nuestra proximidad a la frontera mexicana y las tristes atrocidades que se han cometido y se siguen cometiendo debido al trato inhumano de las personas basado en los ideales de las fronteras socialmente construidas. Es muy importante reconocer, enfrentar y aprender de lo que estamos viendo mientras nos esforzamos por crear un futuro más inclusivo y compasivo.
Thank you, Nadia. And I'm actually going to go ahead and repeat it in English for folks. But I also want to emphasize that while land acknowledgements are great and necessary practices, it's as important to support the land back movements and other actions that support the return of land and power to Indigenous people today. So we humbly extend our gratitude and respect to the Indigenous peoples who have stewarded and nurtured the land we stand on for countless generations. Today, we acknowledge the historical presence and continued contributions of the Atacapa Ishak, Tapilam Kwawartikan, the Sana Band of the Tonkawa tribe, and Karankawa nations in this region. Recognizing the truth and history of this land is essential in fostering mutual respect and understanding. We pay homage to elders, both past and present, as well as the generations yet to come. We hope to honor the Indigenous communities and stand in solidarity with those who have faced injustice near and far. Sorry. It is our collective responsibility to work toward a more just and equitable society built on the foundation of truth, acknowledgement, and genuine connection with one another. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge our proximity to the Mexican border and the distressing atrocities that have occurred and persist due to the inhumane treatment of people based on the ideals of socially constructed borders. It is crucial to recognize, confront, and learn from what we are witnessing while striving to create a more inclusive and compassionate future. Thank you. Sorry, my mouth gets all dry. So like Nadia said, my name is Miguel Ruelas. This is Nadia Oseguera. And I wanted to start off with a super quick and super cute intro to how me and Nadia met. So Nadia and I were working for a large animal welfare organization a few years ago. And we got along very well, very quickly. She's like, kind of. But we actually bonded and became blood sisters at one point when a zombie kitten came into the shelter we were both working out of and latched onto Nadia's fingers. I, in the ultimate act of saviorism, jumped in and grabbed the kitten, who promptly bit me right through the nail. And we both ended up in the ER that time. So that was several years ago. And we no longer are working with the same organization. And in fact, we want to very specifically and clearly say that we are not here today representing any organization. We're here through a shared passion and commitment for moving animal welfare to be a more inclusive and welcoming space for BIPOC folks internally and externally, and to provide tools for animal welfare to be a more culturally responsive ally to the communities that they're serving. It's so me. Okay. Yes, please. So really quickly, thank you all again for joining us. Just a quick rundown of some of the slides that we're going to go over. So I'll define saviorism. I'll also define a little bit of cultural responsiveness. The title of our presentation is Cultural Competence, but as you move through things, you learn, and we learned that competence can sometimes equate to like tolerance, and we want to move past tolerance, right? We want to make sure that we're going into action. So you'll hear us refer to cultural responsiveness instead of tolerance in this presentation. So I'll move through some definitions, and then we will kind of tag team on different examples that we've run into saviorist attitudes within the animal welfare field. Deep breath. Okay.
Got it.
Are y'all nervous? Because I'm nervous.
You're good. Yes.
Thank you. I also have a really bad joke about this cat. It's not a joke, but I was like,
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Nadia. But like, I was like, this is colonizer kitty, and that's why it looks like that. Oh shoot. Still cute, you know, very cute looking. So defining saviorism, sorry. Saviorism is a well-intentioned but misguided belief that one group can save or rescue another group that has been deemed less fortunate or inferior. It often involves a sense of superiority and the assumption that the savior knows what's best for those they are trying to help. However, beneath the surface of good intentions, saviorism perpetuates harmful power dynamics and colonial attitudes. Saviorism's racist and white supremacist roots can be traced back to the era of European colonialism, where they considered themselves morally and culturally superior to the indigenous populations they encountered. They violently imposed their values, customs, and beliefs in order to save people. This had devastating consequences, leading to cultural erasure, exploitation, and oppression. We still witness saviorism in various forms today, including in animal welfare. Well-meaning animal welfare organizations adopt or keep in place a default saviorist attitude when addressing animal welfare issues in communities with different cultural practices. So I'm going to read through a few different situations. You don't got to raise your hand and call yourself out, but just kind of think about whether these are some things that you all trying to ruin my surprise there. And just kind of think through if this is something that has come up for y'all in your organizations, rescues, in your fields. So has your org or rescue denied adoptions if they feel it is not a perfect match? You've asked for proof of homeownership or permission from the landlord to foster or adopt in an attempt to reduce the possibility of the pet being returned. It doesn't. All your forms, your adoption forms, surrender forms, medical, are in English only, making all processes less inclusive, inaccessible, and often more intimidating. Your organization has begun a new project or pilot without community input, assuming that you know what they want or what's best for them. Your organization collects quantitative data without the qualitative data to help narrate the full picture. And so while these scenarios might not immediately appear as acts of saviorism to those dedicated to helping animals, a closer look reveals their connection to ingrained violent practices of imposing a single correct path and stigmatizing communities as undeserving. Saviorism overlooks the cultural, economic, and historical context of the communities involved. Saviorist ideologies regarding animal rights often clash with local culture regarding ways in which communities love their pets. This leads to resistance from communities, hindering the potential for positive and collaborative solutions and a lack of sustainable change. All right, so Phoebe's been trying to come out for a minute. Any Magic School Bus fans out there? My kid got into it and I was so happy because I loved it as a kid. But then I got to watch it with an adult perspective. I was like, ooh. And nothing helps me wrap my head around stuff than like pop culture. It really like sets examples. So Phoebe's an excellent example of saviorism. She wanted to help animals at any cost. And if you see here, she's stepping on Carlos to make sure that she can help her stuffed animal. So she, in every episode, she does some version of this. And if you want to check it out, it's on Netflix. I don't work for them. But it's just kind of a cool, way to see some examples of saviorism.
Oh,
Oh,
working with us.
okay. So I understand that these topics can be overwhelming and the terminology feels daunting. However, it's essential for us to have these conversations in animal welfare. And for far too long, we focus solely on animals, neglecting to address the interwoven aspects of people, the environment, and politics that play a crucial role in creating sustainable and impactful changes. So cultural responsiveness is defined as a way to respond to folks of all cultures in a manner that recognizes, affirms, and values their worth. When I started volunteering in animal welfare almost a decade ago, a buzzword or phrase that I would hear often was meeting them where they're at. Cultural responsiveness is meet them where they're at, leveled up. So we don't just meet folks where they're at and then teach them a better way. We meet, embrace, and recognize and learn from them. BIPOC communities are reservoirs of brilliance filled with ingenious individuals and ideas that can revolutionize animal welfare. We can no longer afford to stick to the narrow confines of our traditional lane and solely focus on pet outcomes. Instead, we need to navigate this road collectively, acknowledging the issues in each lane, including the cracks and potholes that can lead to harmful collisions. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Nadia, who's going to talk about a few different examples in the field. Oh, no, the other way.
Yeah. Oh, my. Cool. Thanks, Miguel. So Miguel set the foundation for these next few examples. I want to start with community cat programming, or CCP. This is usually something that's happening in the community outside of the shelter. And I want to kick it off with messaging. So a lot of the messaging that we hear when we're talking about CCPs is, TNR saves lives, spay neuter saves lives. And while that is true, that spay neuter is one way to address and care for community cats, that messaging alone ignores the fact that there are community members who are already taking care of the cats in their community. Often they're doing it with very limited resources. If you think about a group of cats, or formerly referred to as a colony, we're sometimes talking about 10 to 20 animals that usually one person is responsible for feeding and getting whatever vet care they can get. That messaging also ignores the fact that we are facing an access to care crisis. When I first started in animal welfare, my partner and I encountered a group of cats a few minutes from our local shelter, where there was a national animal welfare organization stationed there doing spay neuter for free, but they were not providing services for community cats. Our local clinics would not even touch cats in cages or traps. And if they did, they would charge the same few $100 per cat that they would do for any other cat. Our nearest truly low barrier free spay neuter clinic was 40 miles from where we live, and that's still the case to date. So messaging alone that just says, let's TNR, let's spay neuter, and not including the other realities is saviorist in itself. The other thing that I see a lot with community cat programs is actively recruiting staff and volunteers to help with the TNR, and it's often people who don't live in the community. TNR is one of those things that can be broken down into a million different pieces. I mean, even the T and the R itself can be broken down into different bits and pieces. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you are going into a community and you're starting to talk to people, tell them what TNR is, and even break it down further. You know, ask them, can you house the animals overnight before surgery or for recovery? Could you just sit and watch the traps for a couple hours, or maybe drive them to their appointment? And I guarantee you that the more that you ask, the more yeses you're going to get. And along with that, I see a lot of efforts to save. Let's get in there and spay neuter as many animals as possible. Let's, reach our life-saving goals. But what if your goals also included building community partnerships? So true partnerships where when you are done altering the animals, you know that the people who are there already caring for them are going to continue to take care of them. And that if they, encounter a sick cat or there's newcomers, because we know that there will be newcomers, they know that they can reach out to you for those services. Collaborating with your community can also involve recruiting fosters and adopters. So I see this sense of urgency to get all the kittens and the friendly cats out of the streets as soon as possible. But people in the community have already been fostering. They're already adoption ambassadors. They're just not using those labels that we put on those things. So if you start to talk to the community and ask them, what have you been doing, with the kittens that are born in your community, you're going to learn a lot from them. The last thing I want to touch on is the perceptions of the TNR site. Often, again, it's let's get these kittens out of here. This friendly cat deserves a loving home. Let's get them into a cat bed. But when you are coming in and saying that's somebody's home, because usually the TNR site is somebody's home, and when you're coming in and you're saying this place is not good enough for animals that are already living outside, it is insulting to the people that you're saying that you want to help. So really be mindful about that. Now we can go to the next slide. Okay, so So next I'm going to talk about foster programming, and this topic is very near and dear to my heart. I started fostering kittens before I joined animal welfare professionally, and then I went on to manage a high-volume kitten foster program for 5 years. Now, I want to admit that I didn't see the saviorism that was embedded into animal welfare and especially foster programming when I first joined. I totally did not see it. It took me working at the same shelter in the community that I was from and seeing that people who looked like me, who lived in my community, were not being invited to foster, and they were actually being excluded from fostering. And I thought to myself, if I didn't work for this organization, I would be excluded too. So I really made an effort through the policies and practices of that program to make fostering as easy and accessible as possible to anybody who wanted to help. So for me, that meant I don't need to know your entire life history or what your blood type is. Fill out this one-page form and we're good to go. If you can't attend our live orientation, that's cool. I'll send you a recording. For me, the more people that could help, the more animals I would be able to help. And I really got a lot of joy of seeing people from all walks of life doing this work besides me and seeing them build a community amongst themselves. So the types of strict policies and practices that I see really on the extreme end are things like background checks, home checks, or in a COVID world, send me a picture of your home. Like, what? I also see these super long applications where people want to know every single person and animal who's living in the home. You're making it harder for people to engage with your program if that's the approach that you're taking, and thus you're making it harder to help the animals that you want to help. The messaging that we see a lot in foster programming, it's this messaging of animals are neglected, animals are unwanted, we need you to help us save these animals. And now I get that that messaging is supposed to create a sense of urgency. Sidebar, urgency is one of the tenets of white supremacy. Google it. Maybe not right now so you can pay attention to the presentation. But so if you want to create a sense of urgency, why not trust that if you ask for help, people will find it in their hearts to help if they have the capacity to do so, and if you make it easy for them to do it. That messaging also paints a false narrative of communities, saying that usually the higher intake communities don't care about animals. They don't want them, these poor animals. And so that trickles down to who you're actually recruiting and inviting in to foster. And it's also a false narrative because right now it's kitten season, and we know that the majority of animals that are going into foster care are kittens who are not neglected or unwanted. They are kittens who are being born as a result of no or very little spay neuter resources for community cats. But when we are placing the blame on the community, they're not going to want to come to the shelter and, come in to help. When finders come in with kittens or dogs, there's this assumption that they just don't want to help. And so people are not asking if they want to help. So again, the more people that you ask when they come to your shelter with animals that they found, the more that you ask to help foster, to give you more information about where they found the animal, the more people are going to be willing to help you. The last thing I'll say here is that typically those who are included, so if we think about the service area for a shelter, the zip codes who are more affluent are the ones that are coming to the rescue and saving the animals. The ones that are excluded are the ones who are in the highest intake zip codes. And I challenge you to look at your data, and then I have business cards so I can give you my email and tell me if I'm wrong, please. So last topic I will cover is adoptions, which very similar to foster programming, has a bunch of red tape all over the place and a lot of hoops that people have to jump through to get animals. The adoption process starts usually with the application or an interest form. And I want to give you some examples of things that I see. In my current role, I get to work with shelters across the state of California. And one of the things that I do as we're working together is look at their adoption applications. Some of the most outlandish questions that I've seen are things like, do you have a pool? Do you drive a pickup truck? And if so, where will the animal ride? Do you smoke? And then this one is like a gotcha question where they ask, how will you punish your animal if they bark excessively? So I would, again, challenge you, review your adoption application. Look at every single question, and if you could be honest with yourself, write down a note. What is the reason for that question? And you're going to find that a lot of those questions are set up so that you can deny or rule out people from adopting. The next thing is the adoption fees. So I see, large dogs, which we all know, large dogs are a large problem right now. Adoption fees are like $500 for a large dog, and there's so many of them, right? They all look the same. So charging these very high adoption fees with the reason of, if you can't afford this adoption fee, then you shouldn't have an animal. We all know that a bag of food is not going to cost $500, so somebody doesn't need to produce $500 on the spot. And so the intention, besides, if they can't afford it, they shouldn't have the pet, it's also this perception of what a perfect home is. So a perfect home is something that is very subjective. The perfect home for my animals might not be the perfect home for your animals. And so that messaging or that perception ignores the fact that people have diverse lifestyles. And it also ignores the fact that the animals have diverse needs. Some animals enjoy spending most of the day outside. Others enjoy spending the whole day inside. And then others just want to live in their backyard and they're fine. So it's not up to us to decide what the perfect home is. The goal should be to get them into a home. A lot of people are not going to like what I'm about to say, but most homes, the vast majority of homes, are going to be better than a kennel. So just saying. Well, I guess a lot of people did like it. I was expecting. So last thing I'll touch on is messaging. I want to focus on the adopt, don't shop messaging. So that messaging alone implies that the only moral way to obtain an animal is through adoption. However, when we have people coming into the shelter to want to adopt animals and we're making them jump through hoops and we're making them pay hundreds of dollars and fill out this long application, they have no other choice but to not adopt and to get an animal from somewhere else, because people are going to get animals. They might just not be getting them from the shelter. So I'll pass it on to you, Miguel.
I think I turned off my mic. Oops. I had a coughing fit and I turned off my mic for a minute. So I'm just it's the last example. And I'm going to talk about return to home a little bit. So in return to home, we understand that practices like owner verification and compliance are geared toward protecting pets and also protecting city shelters and organizations. However, there's some pitfalls in there that really prevail. and one of them is fees. When animals are brought into shelters, fees are often imposed on pet parents trying to get them back. And while these fees are intended to cover the animal's care during the stay, they can inadvertently place a financial burden on individuals, usually disproportionately affecting folks who are already facing economic challenges. And the accumulation of daily fees together with accusatory attitudes that the owner is irresponsible for allowing the pet to escape or that the pet is not properly cared for is not conducive to promoting a compassionate return to home process. It also alienates individuals who genuinely care for their pets but find themselves in difficult financial situations. A more culturally responsive approach is recognizing that financial disparities exist. There's no one size fits all, and partnering with individuals to get the pet home as soon as, and partnering with the individuals to get the pet home as soon as possible is better. So in 2016, I led a pilot out of one of the LA County shelters where we collected data from every return to home, regardless of whether they were in need of any financial assistance or not, through a period of 6 months. And at the end of the pilot, one of the things we found was that most folks were short about $40. And $40 should not be what stands between a pet and getting them home. The other one is citations. So citations in LA, anytime an animal is brought into the shelter, automatically there's a $40 impound fee. And then there's also a citation if the pet is not spayed or neutered, because LA has spay and neuter mandates. And then you got an automatic citation for violation of leash laws, since if your animal was loose, it was off leash. And in some cases, this process really just kind of was exploited to penalize or cite individuals, especially those from marginalized communities, since those communities are often much more heavily policed. This really perpetuated the distrust between animal welfare organizations or their city shelters and communities. So a more culturally responsive approach here would be, one, no automatic citations. If these punitive actions actually worked, then it would have made a change by now. And then also, again, just partnering with folks to provide resources and information rather than just collecting fees. The reunification effort, so a return to home process solely reliant on shelter notifications overlooks the importance of community involvement. So placing found pet posters and seeking support from local residents significantly increase the chance of reuniting lost pets with their families. One experience I've had at LA shelters has been that many community members had no idea that a shelter was located, where the shelter was located, or that's where they would pick up a lost pet. It was only through word of mouth and from other folks who had the same experience that they were able to find their pet. And so when we engage the community in every way and ask for their assistance, we actually get to the opportunity to tap into the collective knowledge and networks that already exist that would facilitate a quicker, more successful reunification. And lastly, the burden of proof. So you found your pet. Yay. It would be great if your pet memorized your address or your government name. But unfortunately, that's never has been the case. And while microchips have become much more accessible, there's still a lot of fear, distrust, and misinformation in different communities that may stop them from acquiring one. Not to mention, it can be difficult to update them, and those suckers move around. Mm-hmm. So if they've been in there for a few years and you're scanning their neck, it's somewhere on their toes. So requiring an excessive burden of proof to establish ownership can impede the return to home process, leading to prolonged stays in shelters and causing unnecessary stress for both the animal and their family. And a fundamental aspect of cultural responsiveness involves trusting people. So by assuming positive intent, we create a more compassionate and efficient return to home process. Oh, dang, we're on time. Okay. So really quick, I'm going to go over a few of the benefits to the community from shifting to cultural responsiveness, and then Nadia is going to go through some benefits for your organization. So experiencing, one of the things that I put down was experiencing the joys of animal welfare. And we all know that animal welfare is a very, very special place. I'm sure everyone here would agree with that. And with anti-saviorism, animal welfare becomes a journey that is shared through joy and understanding. And instead of focusing solely on rescuing animals, the emphasis shifts towards building meaningful relationships with both pets and their families. Reframing animal welfare to be more culturally responsive allows animal welfare professionals and communities to experience the fulfillment and happiness that comes from positively impacting pet lives and eases the tension that has been built between communities and animal welfare. This also means that there's more engagement. Encouraging community engagement and empowering individuals to actively participate in animal welfare initiatives instead of enforcing rigid rules and punitive measures shifts the focus. Instead, we're collaborating and we're encouraging community members to contribute their insights and ideas. This inclusive approach not only strengthens the community's trust in animal welfare, but it also amplifies the impact that animal welfare can have in the community. And lastly, seen, heard, and understood. So one of the most profound benefits of cultural responsiveness is that it acknowledges and values the voices of all stakeholders involved, including pet parents, community members, and animal welfare advocates. Everyone's perspective is seen, heard, and understood, creating a sense of shared responsibility and the well-being of animals. The mutual respect and appreciation foster a positive environment for meaningful change and innovation.
So I'll share some of the benefits that your organization could experience by moving to this approach. So we are asking you, or we're suggesting that you make changes in your practices and policies. I know that that's not always super easy, but in doing so, you're actually going to protect yourself against any bias that you might carry or that your organization as a whole subscribes to. For example, if you remove all of those intrusive, irrelevant questions from your adoption application, you're not going to have that information that would bias you towards denying certain people. Instead, your staff can spend time talking to people, guiding them through the decision-making process as they're coming through the shelter, not reviewing these super lengthy applications, but just really being invested in what are people, what animals do you want and how can I help you get that animal? The community is also going to see your shelter as more of a resource. So if you are putting all this red tape and gatekeeping against your community, they're going to see an us versus them dynamic. But when you start inviting them in and being more open to talking to them and hearing from them, then they're going to see you as a resource. I just heard a presentation before this one where they were talking about that people call them up to ask them different questions related to their animals. And so that's what you're going to see. The other great benefit is that your length of stay is going to decrease. So it's just natural that when you make fostering more accessible or adopting more accessible, when you're not charging all these RTO fees, animals are going to move out of the shelter more quickly. If you're also being intentional about engaging your community in a thoughtful and humble and respectful manner, then you might also see some benefits on the front end. So you might see your intake decrease as well. So those are just some of the recommendations. And the last thing that I will say there is to please try to invest in your highest intake communities rather than blaming them for having to bring animals in. Be curious about what's going on and see how you can help them. So I see that we have about 10 minutes left. So we're going to give you a couple minutes to talk amongst yourselves or write something down if you don't want to talk to people. What shifts are you ready to make based on what we just talked about? So just take a couple minutes, and then we'll ask one or two people to share if you're comfortable. Looking at the clock.
Got it. How much water do you have in there?
If you're not
Yeah,
grossed out.
I don't care because my mouth is so dry.
I see.
Thank you.
All people are like, we're out of here.
No, we're not done yet.
I know. There's su oportunidad ahí, said.
Should we do that's it?
No, we're gonna. What?
No, I mean, should we say the time's up?
Okay. Yeah. How many minutes was it?
It's been like a minute.
What? Okay.
All right, since folks, is this on? Since folks are taking the opportunity to sneak out, I'm just kidding.
Wait,
we're just gonna go ahead and keep moving.
If you can hear us, clap once. If you can hear us, clap twice. I don't know if that's how it goes, but I just remember, Jasmine, you tried that, and it works. Okay. So we're losing people. They don't want to make shifts, right? So, okay. But, no, it wasn't just them. A bunch of people walked out too. So who wants to share? We'll take one or two people. You want to share? I saw that hand go up. Do you? Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Thank you for being brave.
Cool. Okay. My name is Gabrielle. I am from the City of Baytown Animal Services. I am the outreach supervisor. So one of the shifts that I feel like we need to make is to get that community involvement as far as going out there so they can actually see who we are since our staff has changed, as well as the things that we do in the shelter have changed, and to see what their needs are as far as putting out that survey to see where we can meet them at some point, and to at least know that we hear them and we're working towards some common goal versus them being unaware of what we're doing in the shelter. So that's one of those.
Thank you for sharing. Did you want to? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, everyone. So I come from a community where I thought we were being very inclusive in how we were putting our materials out. But in sitting here and listening to what you're presenting, we haven't done everything that we thought we were doing. So we usually do put out materials in the languages that are most prominently spoken in our community. But what we didn't do is we haven't shifted how we're recruiting. For like example, our foster program. So we have, mandatory sessions that they have to attend to be part of our foster program. And when COVID happened, we thought, oh my God, we're so brilliant. We're going to put these webinars out there and people can just become foster parents. But we've never done these presentations in any other language other than English, right? And so we think, I think it goes to say that, yes, I think we can all use a little bit of help in becoming more inclusive, but it's also looking at things that you feel are working for you already and taking a second look and, making that assessment once again. What are the needs right now? So we always have individuals who want to help animals, but maybe don't have the resources or the time or the flexibility that other communities may be able to offer, but they're willing to help. And so I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm like, okay, well, what if I partnered a non-native English speaking foster parent with someone who can, assist me in being able to translate services or something like that. So I think that that's a very small change that can make a really big difference in helping animals get out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you both. And I know we're running out of time and y'all are probably hungry. So we're gonna move into some of the key anti-saviorism approaches that we really want you all to leave with today.
Yeah, and we know you can't do it all, so pick one or two things from this list. So first is removing red tape from your processes. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in the current state of the outcomes processes of animal welfare. So whether it's your adoption application, RTO process, foster, and even from there you can break it down into smaller bits and pieces. Do targeted outreach. So I mentioned earlier, see where your animals are coming from. A fun exercise you can do is to look at where all your adopters and fosters are coming from, so all the zip codes, and then also look at where your intake is coming from. And I'll give you a spoiler that there's not going to be much overlap. So do targeted outreach where you are not seeing adopters and fosters. And please do it in a thoughtful, respectful, and humble manner.
So then translations, offering resources and information in as many languages as possible, and really in as many languages as necessary or as needed, allows for greater partnerships with community members and more opportunities for community input, which will almost always increase buy-in of projects and initiatives. And this kind of goes with the last one, which is centering community members and providing decision-making opportunities. So if your organization is embarking on a new project, a pilot with a 5-year strategy, and the ambitious goal of spaying or neutering 52.7 cats daily to hit the mark, backed by a projected 25% reduction in animal intake over 5 years, and all meticulously detailed across a concise 110 pages, yet not a single discussion or input has been sought from the community residents, brace yourself for unsustainable change. You might be successful temporarily, or you might not, but lasting impact is off the table. Your hardworking coordinators and community liaisons will eventually burn out, and without the involvement of community members, the flame just won't keep burning. Carve out room for community input. It often sets off a domino effect of commitment and support. I know we don't have time, but isn't this so cute?
We had to.
We're like, we're gonna build a tool.
Purse.
A tool what? A tool
Tool
belt,
purse.
a tool kit. We decided on a tool purse.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Really quickly, we want to give a shout out to Maddie's fund. Maddie has been, yay!
Yay! Thank you, Nadia.
Maddie's has been quietly but unapologetically supporting BIPOC folks in animal welfare, and we thank them for being true partners in this movement.
Yeah, so we're at time, but what y'all think? If you have any questions, any pushback, any debates, we'll be here for another 10 minutes. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We did it.